So guys, today I continue to share information about how to successfully grow Njama Njama out here in the diaspora. I'm super passionate about this vegetable because it is culturally meaningful for me. This is what my ancestors grew on, and this is what we were raised on. I'm on a mission to getting everybody to know about the Njama Njama, that is the garden huckleberry, and to get everyone growing it. Why not? So I'm here today to share with you some tips around growing the Njama Njama. By watching this video, you're gonna find out when to start the seeds. I get asked that question a lot, when to start Njama Njama seeds, when to transplant the Njama Njama seeds. We're gonna talk about whether you should start your seeds indoors, you should start the seeds on a seed bed, or you should just broadcast the seeds and walk away. We're going to talk about pest management. I get asked a lot of questions around how to manage pests in the Njama Njama garden. And then we're also going to talk about feeding, fertilization, watering, harvesting, all of that good stuff. So guys, just grab a cup of tea because this is going to be a lot of value in this video. I'm going to ask you to give the video a thumbs up, please. I appreciate your support always, always, always. Thank you. And guys, before I forget, I do sell the seeds of the Njama Njama. What you get is a whole cup of seeds like so. When you order, you probably get a pack and it is the equivalence of this cup. This one right here is the Bamenda Njama Njama, what I have growing on this bed right here. Let me show you. This one over here is this one, okay? So if you need some Njama Njama seeds, let me know and I will send some over to you. I already harvested the Njama Njama that I started from seeds, and guess what? It only took me 45 days. So let's start with timing because this is key when to start the seeds. Super important. Best time to start, guys, after the last frost date, maybe that week or 1 to 2 weeks after that. If you wait too long, you can still grow Njama Njama, but the thing is, you're not going to get as many harvests out of it before it wants to bolt. Bolt means it wants to produce flowers and then it wants to produce seeds, because the hotter it gets, it sends a signal to the plants that you need to just reproduce and get out of here. The leaves are no longer tender, it is bitter, it just wants to produce flowers and die. So don't wait too long. I would say 1 to 3 weeks after your last frost dates, then you start the seeds. Now let's talk about whether you should start the seeds indoors, whether you should just direct sow, or whether you should direct sow and transplant. You know, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I already mentioned that I went from seed to harvest, seed to food on my table in 45 days, meaning that the Njama Njama is a fast growing, quick crop. In my opinion, there's no need to mess around starting the seeds indoors. I reserve seeds starting indoors for things like peppers, garden eggs, tomatoes, things like that. That really take a long time to grow. But things like Njama Njama, there's really no need to start the seeds indoors. Just wait until it is warm enough and then you can grow the seeds in the garden directly. What I would recommend is that you have a seed bed, like designate an area where it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to start my Njama Njama seeds and then transplant them if you have more space in the garden. And the reason for that is when you start your seeds and then transplant them later on, you can control the spacing. You can control the quality of what you are transplanting, because you throw a bunch of seeds, some are going to come out strong, some are going to come out weak, some are going to come out diseased, and you don't want all of that. But when you're transplanting, you're selecting only the best and moving them over, and then you're controlling the spacing distance, which is super important. This is something people don't know. The bigger the space between the Njama Njama, the healthier it can grow, the more branches it will eventually form, and the more harvest you can get. And when you have that space, it's easier to manage the vegetables. It's easier to mulch. You could mulch if you wanted to, and mulching helps to control weed. Mulching helps to control, it helps with moisture retention. You don't need to water as much because you have that layer of grass or mulch or whatever on top. It conserves moisture, and then it also regulates the soil temperature. So I highly recommend that you start your Njama Njama on a seed bed and then transplant them later on. And when you start that Njama Njama on a seed bed, you've broadcasted the seeds, um, it's coming out and it's overcrowded, feel free to thin out the Njama Njama. This is something that people don't do that also drives me nuts. If you find that there's a lot of Njama Njama growing in one place and it's not looking healthy, go ahead and just remove some. Create that air space. Create that space so your Njama Njama can breathe and it can grow. And the ones that are growing can have access to more nutrients. So thinning out maybe about 3 weeks after seed sowing is super important as well. Don't be afraid to just root them out and throw them away. It is okay. And let me say this about seed sowing your Njama Njama. Guys, there's a lot of seeds in here. Like Njama Njama seeds are super tiny seeds. And sometimes we get impatient and we put a lot of seeds in one place. You're only setting yourself up for trouble. You don't need that many seeds in one place. When you're sowing the seeds, take the time to just take a pinch of your Njama Njama and just spread it around. You know, you don't need that much. If you start with too much, you're only setting yourself for problems down the road. It will be too crowded, and Njama Njama would not look very healthy. You would have to thin them out and so on and so forth. Don't put too many when you are sowing the seeds in the first place. All right, guys, let's talk about what I get asked the most. Like, please, what do I do with the pests attacking my Njama Njama? So there are different types of pests that can attack your Njama Njama plants. You can deal with biting and chewing insects, and how you would know, you would have holes in your leaves that look like so. Let's see. Yeah, you would have holes, irregular leaves, something like this, you know, something ate off that part, something put holes. Another very common pest in the Njama Njama garden is aphids. Aphids, you would see aphids when you have twisted leaves like so. And then when you look on the underside of the leaf, this is not a good example. Let me find a good example of aphids. All right, guys, this is how you know you have aphids in the garden. The leaves will be twisted like so and like so, okay? And if you look on the underside of the leaf, you would find the aphids themselves. Very gross looking, tiny insects. And sometimes you would find ants in there as well, okay? So this is aphids, like so. Sometimes you would find ants along with the aphids, and that's because ants and aphids are like rice and beans. Okay, they have a symbiotic relationship. One helps the other. The ants helps the aphids helps the ants. The aphids eat your plants, produce sugars, the ants feed on the sugars. So usually when you have an aphids problem in the garden, you have an ants problem. If you take care of the ants, usually the aphids issue would go away. So what do I do and what can you do? If you look here, guys, I'll show you. See these flowers? They are known as marigolds, marigold flowers. I have them there not just to make my garden beautiful. It does make my garden beautiful, but it does have a functional use as well. Those flowers, they help to repel pests in the garden. They repel the snails and the slugs, and then they also attract another type of insect, which is a beneficial one known as the ladybug. The ladybug goes around and feeds on the aphids. It feeds on the bad insects. Not all insects in the garden are bad. Okay, so if you have those ladybugs, which the marigolds help to attract, they will help with the aphids. They will help to repel slugs and snails. So put a border of aphids in your garden. It's one way to control slugs and snails in your garden and in your Njama Njama garden as well. That is one solution. The other solution is I have some products with which I will show you. This one here. It says ant control for organic gardening. They're pellets. I just put, you know, I just dust some around the garden, and you can do so, I believe, once every 30 days, something like that. But this helps to control ants in the garden. It also helps to control snails and slugs in the garden. Good for organic gardening. There's another product that I use, this one right here, bug and slug killer. It kills bugs, snails and slugs in the garden. Again, these are pellets, and you sprinkle around your garden, and it helps to control that. The goal here is not to kill all the snails and slugs and pests in your garden, but we're trying to find balance. We're trying to find balance. We're trying to live in harmony with these things so they don't take over your garden and your hard work, but then we can get a harvest. That is the goal. In fact, if you do find Njama Njama without any of the twisted leaves or any holes, run. It means that that garden has been heavily sprayed with insecticides, and that's not good for your health either. There's another product that I use, this one here. And I only pull this out when I really have a bad infestation to spray. It helps with caterpillars, it helps with thrips. Thrips is another type of insect that can just cause like havoc overnight. It puts tiny holes in your Njama Njama and basically wants to destroy it. So when I notice that in the garden, I pull this one and I spray the garden with. So yeah, guys, that's how I manage pests in my Njama Njama garden. I come at it on several fronts. I plant the marigold, the flowers, and then I also, put spray the ants thing to control ants and therefore control aphids. And then I use the bug one to control snails and slugs in the garden. I hope this was useful. Now, guys, let's talk about watering your Njama Njama garden and just watering your garden generally. More gardens have been destroyed by people over watering their gardens than vice versa. I'll say that again. More gardens, more plants have been destroyed by people watering their garden too much than under watering their garden. Believe me, it is true. When you overwater your garden, your plants, the roots cannot breathe. They need air to breathe. You suffocate the roots and then you kill your plants that way. So, how frequently should you water your Njama Njama? Now, it's going to depend. That is the long answer. It is going to depend on where you are, the temperatures, how much water you water when you actually do water, how much rainfall you are getting. So, it is not a one size fits all for everybody. The ultimate test, in my opinion, is you take your index finger, you stick it in the ground, okay? Stick it in the ground. If it feels wet, the ground is wet enough, you don't need to water anymore. So do that every time you think about, I need to go water my Njama Njama or any other vegetable that you have in your garden. Always do that finger test. If you stick it in there, it feels wet, there is no need to water. There's no need to just flood your plants with a lot of water. And then when you actually do have to water, just soak it enough so that it can go a few days without you needing to water. Don't water every day. There's really no need to water every day, except it's in like the summer, or you have your plants in a container where the container really dries out fast. But then again, always do that finger test before you water. All right, guys, let's talk about fertilization, feeding your Njama Njama plants, what to use, how frequently to fertilize, and so on and so forth. The key to having healthy Njama Njama garden, bountiful harvest, is to take care of the soil before you ever put your seeds in the garden. I'll repeat that. The key is taking care of the soil before you sow the seeds. When you take care of the soil, it will take care of your plants. What do I mean by taking care of the soil? Taking time to amend the soil, add compost, add manure, add nutrients, if your soil is deficient in nutrients, before you put the seeds. When you do that, you set your garden up for success. Now, the things that I put in my bed: compost. You can put mushroom compost. Mushroom compost is super, super good. Or if you're doing your own composting, perfect. You can get compost from your compost bin, add to your soil. And then you can also add things like manure. Poultry manure is good. Cow manure is good. And rabbit manure is also good. Back home in Africa, we could also use like goat poop of goat. Let me just say it that way. You can add it to your garden. Your Njama Njama or other leafy greens, they love nitrogen. The things that you're growing for leaves, they want nitrogen to do well. If you're growing your Njama Njama in containers, you can just buy like a Miracle Grow soil. It has stuff in there that will support your Njama Njama growth. Now, after your Njama Njama is already growing, you've sown the seeds, it's growing, and you're looking at it. If you find that it's yellowing a little, it means that it is missing in some nutrients. So you can fertilize. This is what I use. This is for organic gardening. It is fish fertilizer, 511, high nitrogen, 5. Where's the 511? So these numbers: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So this is a high nitrogen fertilizer, but this stuff is super stinky. This is a water soluble fertilizer. It's liquid. So the roots of your plants are gonna quickly absorb this and just like give your plants an immediate boost. So after my Njama Njama has sprouted, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, about 3 weeks, when I'm thinning out the Njama Njama, I start feeding it with this right here, the fish fertilizer, and then I do so every week. I have my days, my fertilization days are Mondays. So 3 weeks I fertilize, 4 weeks I fertilize with this, 5 weeks I fertilize with this, and then I start harvesting. Every time I harvest, I fertilize. And harvesting is like bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. So after about 5 weeks of growing my Njama Njama, after I have harvested the first time, then I start to fertilize every 2 weeks. That's just the way I do it. And this is what I use because I try to do organic gardening practices. This is not to shame anyone using chemical fertilizers because there's a place for it. This is a water soluble Miracle Grow because we have granular fertilizers which come in like solid pelleted forms. I don't have that here. And we also have these ones that you have to dissolve in water before you apply. You dissolve it in water, it is in liquid form, it hits the roots like immediately and you see a change. Again, there's a place for chemical fertilizers. So I use it when I'm doing seed starting indoors because I don't want stinky stuff inside the house. It's not going to hurt you, contrary to what people say, if you're using very little amounts. And you need a watering can when you're messing around with fertilizers. Follow the instructions. When it says use one tablespoon per gallon, don't think that if I use two, it means that my plants are gonna go bigger because sometimes you might just end up killing your plants. When it comes to fertilizers, take the 5 seconds it requires to read the instructions, which will be right there. Please take it from me. Read the instructions and follow the amounts. Too much fertilization will kill your plants. It's better to err on the side of under fertilizing than over fertilizing. Know what you are doing. If you need the Njama Njama seeds, contact me. I do have some for sale. I have them in packs like this, and this is how much you get. It's a whole cup of seeds. Let me know in the comment section, and I'll share the information on how you can order your Njama Njama seeds. Let others know that I am selling Njama Njama seeds. I'm super passionate about this vegetable, and I need to get as many people as I can to try this very delicious, nutritious vegetable. Now let's talk about harvesting your Njama Njama. You can expect to start harvesting your Njama Njama from 45 days after seed sowing. 45 days after seed sowing, you can expect to start harvesting. And it is a cut and come again type of vegetable, which means that you harvest, you go eat the leaves, and then it's going to keep producing more as you harvest. So you cut and it comes again. You cut and it produces side shoots from the nodes, and usually in my experience is a bi-weekly harvest. So every other week I can harvest, and the more you harvest, the more it produces and the more you can harvest. Now, how many cycles of those? In my experience, 10 cycles of harvesting, and then the Njama Njama is either diseased or it starts to bolt, which means it produces flowers and then seeds. And that's because that happens to coincide with summer out here in zone 9A when it is quite hot. And when the temperatures are that high, the Njama Njama is like, oh, I need to just reproduce and die. And so, it becomes like it just does not become edible again. Let me put it that way. The leaves are super bitter at that point and it's just not worth it. So I get rid of it around the end of June and plant something else because I'm doing kind of intensive gardening out here. So guys, I hope you found a lot of value in this video. I'm going to ask you to give it a thumbs up, and I sincerely hope that I earned your subscription if you found value in this channel. Thank you so much for watching. And the most important ask that I have of you is that you should grow a garden, because when you grow a garden, you grow health. I believe that sincerely. Happy gardening, everybody. Until next time. Bye bye.